today on FanDuel TV. 3-year-old hopefuls in 2
Because I
pivotal
don't get
prep
any
races
warning
on the
besides.
road to the Kentucky Derby. From Turfway Park, the $777,000 Grade 3 Jeff Ruby Stakes. And from the fairgrounds, don't miss the $1 million Grade 2 Louisiana Derby. The winner of each race receives 100 Derby qualifying points. It's a great day for racing. Play this Saturday on the FanDuel Racing app.
Thank you, Megan. Yeah, what a day it is going to be here on FanDuel TV as we get you set up for 200-point Derby preps, one from the fairgrounds, one from Turfway Park. We'll have on-site coverage at both of those racetracks. There is going to be some serious shaking up on the leaderboard as far as who is maybe out of the Kentucky Derby right now and who is going to shoot to the top of the list. Here are some money back special races that you can participate on today here in your FanDuel Racing accounts. We're talking about 5 of them. We got fairgrounds races 9 and 11, Turfway Park races 10 and 11, and even later on in the day, a little bit of fun for you out at Santa Anita race number 7 will be the 5th and final money back special for you. Get up to $10 back if you finish 2nd and 3rd on those 5 races when you make a wager in your FanDuel Racing account. So, as I mentioned, we have coverage from both fairgrounds and Turfway Park. By the way, hello to some of those that are watching on our social platforms right now. We're going to send it out to Turfway Park and check in with Ashley Mayu, who's going to get us all set up for the big day, their biggest day, bar none, out at Turfway Park. It is Jeff Ruby Stakes Day, and the undercard is fantastic as well. Hey, Ash.
Hey, Dave. Good to see you. Excited to be here at Turfway Park. You mentioned the card is great. It is a huge card, 13 races in total. There are some scratches, but these were races that were overfilled. A lot of these horses had 13 or 14 horses in them. So even with the scratches, still big fields all day long. And obviously looking forward to the 12th race on the program, the Jeff Ruby Stakes. And looking at the event, I think it's a very intriguing field as we look at this race top to bottom. And the big question will be sort of which camp do you go in? I think a lot of people will go in the California Burrito camp. A lot will also like Poster. And I'm going to go outside of these two, Dave, but I think it's an interesting talking point in terms of this field because California Burrito comes in here off a pretty big win in the prep race here locally at Turfway Park in the John Battaglia, where he was able to duplicate things on the front end once again, and very different running style than we've seen from Poster. So as we look at these two sort of head-to-head now, being the main 2 horses on paper, I think when you look at California Burrito, we talked about his early foot and sort of his resume so far. He's done very well here locally, but Poster comes in off of that performance down at Tampa Bay Downs where we saw Owen Almighty, John Hancock battle it out on the front end in there. And in terms of the closers, he was really moving best late of all out of that flight, but just was 3rd best in there. So we'll see how the track plays. That's been a big talking point here at Turfway Park. It was very speed favoring. It seemed to even out, but last night on the card overall, speed held very well. So we'll have to see how those earlier races progress. But speaking more about the Jeff Ruby and the success, this is one of those points races on the road to the Kentucky Derby. So looking at how horses have fared here in the Jeff Ruby over the years, when you go back to 2023, 2 Fells, he actually won the Jeff Ruby, but he was 2nd in the Kentucky Derby. We can see several horses in here. Rich Strike. We can look at Little E.T. as well as Animal Kingdom. Dave, they've been able to win this race and then back that up with a win in the Kentucky Derby. But Turfway Park isn't the only game in town today. We know the fairgrounds has a tremendous card ahead, so let's check in with the team out there.
Ashley, thank you. Welcome to New Orleans here on, look, the temperature, guys, says, I think, 70 degrees. Oh, you pulled them out. Good
I had
job.
to pull them out. I can't see my iPad here. I can't even see a thing.
Sitting here at our set, no exaggeration, it's probably 100 degrees.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the real feel for sure. But with humidity, too.
Yeah. We are baking in the sun, but we're excited. We have a long day ahead of us and good racing ahead of us, culminating with the big one, the Louisiana Derby. Matt Simon and Joe here getting you ready to go for the big 100 points awarded to the winner. And, guys, you take a look at this field, 1 mile and 3/16. Joe, you've ridden here many, many times. This distance is such an anomaly as far as the prep season is concerned. This is going to be the closest thing to the real deal the first Saturday in May at Churchill Downs.
Without a doubt. And with the fairgrounds being one of the longest stretches in the country, it's going to hurt and help quite a few horses in here. And look, there's a lot of horses in here on the upswing, a couple of red and blinkers with Built and Vassimo, so it's going to be a really good race. I'm just excited to see it. And as you mentioned, a mile and 3/16. I mean, you just don't see that the last prep for the Derby.
All three of us coming off a trip to Virginia, where the winner of that race came out of the Risen Star. That's the key prep. A lot of the horses coming back in here again today. We're going to see how that holds up. Chunk of Gold was the best finisher out of that Risen Star. He had a trouble trip. We'll talk more about that later. But I got a price in there, Matt. I think there's a horse that could upset.
All right. Speaking of Chunk of Gold, he was the best finisher as far as the Risen Star is concerned coming back here. Here's a tale of the tape between he and a new shooter. John Hancock down on the inside, Flavien Prat, Brad Cox, perfect 2 for 2. Conversely, Chunk of Gold, only one win to date so far, but a couple of runner-up finishes. Does the experience, Simon, over this track make any kind of a difference, or do you think of it more on just a case-by-case basis where John Hancock is speed, Chunk of Gold is a closer? It's going to boil down to the pace.
Yeah, case-by-case basis, especially this time of year with improving 3-year-olds' pace. John Hancock has more tactical speed than Chunk of Gold. Wherever John Hancock is early in the race, Chunk of Gold's going to be 4 to 5 lengths behind him.
Chunk of Gold is 8-1 on the morning line. For more on this upset candidate, let's check in again with Dave Weaver.
Yeah, and, there's a horse in this race that cost $1 million, but not Chunk of Gold. When you go back to October of 2023, when he was a yearling, he was purchased for just $2,500. So what we did, we took the price of gold back then, an ounce, and it was going for about $1,976. Now it's going for over $3,000. That's pretty good return on your money, right? 54%. Chunk of Gold, we talked to some big power hitters, what he's worth right now. We came up with $900,000. 35,900% return on your money, turning $2,500 into $900,000. So right now, Chunk of Gold, a much better investment than an ounce of gold, and I like him today too.
Bye.
Yeah, I didn't know we had Dave Kramer on the show from CNBC.
Jim Kramer.
Yeah, exactly.
I love it.
Mad money.
Chunk of Gold. Who knows? Look, with a win here later on, Joe, Chunk of Gold, they'd have multiple chunks of gold en route to Louisville.
And not only that, I mean, he finished second. He had a trouble trip. He checked at the quarter pole at the main start of the race when you want to get going and still finish second. And he has an extra 8 today. So he has a really good shot.
Dave's going to jump into that later, by the way. He has a segment on the trouble trip about how bad it was.
He was also the only horse making up any ground in that race.
Yes.
That was one that basically was a merry-go-round with the exception of him. So we'll talk more about the Louisiana Derby later on. The girls also have their final key prep race here in New Orleans. Let's take a look at the Fairgrounds Oaks, where there is one name that kind of towers over the rest of the field, that being Good Cheer. Note that the 6 Bless the Broken will not run here. Good Cheer, Joe, at 4 to 5 in the morning line, a perfect 5 for 5, goes out for Brad Cox, a homebred for Godolphin. Luis Saez retains the mount. She's done nothing wrong in 5 starts. The smallest margin of victory is more than 2. Point blank, does she lose today?
I mean, she's going to have a brutal trip for her to get beat today. I mean, she's 4 to 5 morning line. I could see her going off at probably 2, 3 to 5. I mean, look, she hasn't done a thing wrong in 5 starts. And as you mentioned, when she wins going away. And I just love, like, when you look at her numbers, she's improved every single time.
Simon, she was 1 to 20 in this race that we're looking at, the Rachel Alexandra. She sits in the pocket, she gets out, she goes off and wins for fun. Tougher field here today. I mean, do you look at it and say at the end of the day there's really no new shooter, new fresh face in here that can run with her? Or?
Yeah, it's her and then everybody else. There's a considerable drop-off to the rest of the field. So, look, it's her race to lose. I think even if she brings a B game, she wins. She's got a great post position here this afternoon. So I think absolutely she's going to be the head of the class after this race.
And a win here would just further solidify favoritism for the Kentucky Oaks. First Friday in May, as we are all sitting here. I tell you what, it's a tough day to be equipment here in New Orleans, because if we're sitting here on the set, all of our PPs are crashing because it's too hot right now sitting in the sun. So hopefully we'll have things cool down a little bit before first post. First post is about an hour away. We'll talk more about the Fairgrounds Oaks. We'll talk more about the Louisiana Derby later on. And speaking of the Louisiana Derby, Megan Payton is standing by. More information on our money-back special offer in terms of the Kentucky Derby prep races.
The quest for points towards the Run for the Roses rolls on, and you can get on the action with our FanDuel Racing Road to the Derby Money Back Special. Get up to $20 back if your horse finishes second or third in select Kentucky Derby prep races from now until April 12th. Here's how it works.
No,
Place a
he's
single
making-
horse win
he's making
wager
points.
on
Okay,
eligible
okay.
Kentucky Derby prep races. The race
that's
must
amazing.
have 8 runners to pay back third and 6 runners to pay back for second. If you're on the FanDuel Racing app, on the
It's a bummer, we
homepage,
went
scroll on down to the promotions tab. You will see Road to the Derby,
The
Money
lines are
Back
gonna be
Special.
super long.
Click on View Offer,
Oh, I
where you can
forgot we did
opt
that
on in
before.
here today and take advantage of all the promotions on the FanDuel Racing app.
Yeah, that's fine. Hey, Sandy. Yep. Yep. I can't do that. No. Yep.
Thank you, Megan. Now, how about